Welcome back to Narrations. This is a story about hidden brilliance, about pain buried so deep it becomes identity, and about the quiet, terrifying moment when someone realizes they might actually be capable of more than survival. This is not a story about genius alone. It's a story about fear, the fear of being seen, of being chosen, and of risking everything for the chance to grow. This is the story of Good Will Hunting. Will Hunting spends his days cleaning floors at one of the most prestigious universities in the world. The hallways echo with ambition, intelligence, and futures being shaped, none of which seem to belong to him. He pushes a mop quietly, unnoticed, just another maintenance worker blending into the background of greatness. But Will is anything but ordinary. He lives in South Boston, sharing a cramped apartment with his best friend Chucky, a construction worker with a sharp tongue and a fierce loyalty. Their lives follow a simple rhythm: work during the day, beers at night, jokes that border on cruelty, and a bond forged through shared hardship. There's comfort in the predictability. No one expects much from them, and that feels safe. Will is a regular at the local bar, a place thick with bravado and unspoken rules. It's there that his intelligence first slips out, not proudly, but defensively. When a smug graduate student belittles a young woman he's talking to, Will steps in. Calm, cutting, precise. He dismantles the student's argument effortlessly, citing obscure historical and academic references without hesitation. The bar goes quiet. The graduate student is humiliated. The woman is impressed. Will shrugs it off like it's nothing. Because to him, it is. This is how Will survives. He uses intelligence like armor, not to build something, but to protect himself from being dismissed, controlled, or exposed. His mind is vast, but his world is small by design. At MIT, Professor Gerald Lambeau writes an impossibly complex mathematical problem on a chalkboard, challenging his students to solve it. It's a test meant to identify the best of the best. Weeks pass. No one succeeds. Late one night, after the building empties, Will pauses during his cleaning routine. He stares at the problem. Not with awe. Not with intimidation. With curiosity. And then he solves it. Quietly. Casually. He writes the solution on the board and leaves without a word. The next day, the campus buzzes with excitement. Lambeau is stunned. He assumes the solution came from one of his top students. But no one claims it. When another, even harder problem appears on the board, Will solves that one too, only this time, he's caught. Lambeau confronts him, incredulous. A janitor. From South Boston. With a mind capable of redefining mathematics. At first, Will resists. He downplays it. Makes jokes. Deflects with sarcasm. He has no interest in being examined, praised, or elevated. Because being noticed comes with expectations. And expectations come with the risk of failure. But fate doesn't ask permission. Not long after, Will and his friends get into a fight with a man who bullied them as children. Old wounds surface. Anger explodes. The situation spirals out of control. Will is arrested and faces serious jail time. This time, there's no quick joke to get him out. Lambeau intervenes, offering a deal. Will avoids prison if he agrees to study mathematics under his supervision and attend therapy sessions to address his violent behavior. Will agrees not because he wants help, but because he refuses to rot in a cell. The therapy sessions are a disaster. One therapist after another tries to analyze him, fix him, label him. Will dismantles each one mercilessly, using their own words and insecurities against them. He treats therapy like combat, and he always wins. Until he meets Sean McGuire. Sean is different. He's older. Worn. Quiet. He doesn't posture or intimidate. He simply listens. At first, Will mocks him like the others. He targets Sean's past. His wife. His pain. But this time, the reaction is different. Sean doesn't retreat. He stands his ground calmly but firmly, warning Will not to cross that line again. Not with anger, with honesty. Something shifts. Sean doesn't try to impress Will. He doesn't try to outsmart him. He treats him like a person, not a problem to solve. And that unsettles Will more than anything else ever has. Outside therapy, Lambo pushes Will harder, introducing him to high-powered academics, government recruiters, and elite job opportunities. Everyone sees Will's potential as a resource, something to be harnessed, optimized, and used. No one asks what Will wants. Chucky, meanwhile, watches all of this with growing frustration. One night, after another beer-soaked evening, he confronts Will with brutal honesty. He tells Will that their lives are predictable. That they'll be doing the same thing in 20 years. And that's fine, for him. But not for Will. Because Will has a gift. And if he wastes it, Chucky says it'll be an insult. Not to the world. To himself. The words land heavier than Will lets on. In therapy, Sean begins peeling back layers Will has spent a lifetime protecting. They talk about books, history, and experiences, but Sean gently pushes deeper. He points out something Will has never considered. Knowledge is not experience. Will has read everything. But he hasn't lived much of it. He hasn't traveled. He hasn't committed. He hasn't allowed himself to love without escape routes. Sean speaks from pain, not theory. He talks about losing his wife, about love worth the risk of devastation, about how some things can't be learned from a book. Will listens. For once, he doesn't fight back. Around this time, Will meets Skylar, a brilliant Harvard student with a sharp mind and an open heart. Their connection is immediate and intense. She challenges him intellectually, but more importantly, emotionally. Skylar sees through his defenses. And that terrifies him. As their relationship deepens, Will begins sabotaging it. He pushes her away with cruelty, mocking her privilege, rejecting her affection before she can reject him. When Skylar asks him to move with her to California, the idea overwhelms him. Leaving South Boston means leaving safety. It means trusting happiness. And trusting happiness feels reckless. In therapy, Sean finally breaks through. He sits across from Will and repeats a simple sentence. It's not your fault. At first, Will laughs it off. He deflects. He resists. Sean says it again. And again. Each repetition chips away at something Will has carried since childhood: abuse, abandonment, the belief that pain is deserved. Eventually, the defenses collapse. Will breaks down, sobbing, collapsing into Sean's arms like a child who has been holding his breath for decades. It's the first time he allows himself to grieve. Not just what happened to him, but what he lost because of it. Will doesn't leave Sean's office the same person who entered it. Something fundamental has shifted. The armor he's worn for most of his life, the sarcasm, the anger, the intellectual superiority, has cracked. For the first time, Will understands that the pain he's been carrying isn't proof of strength or intelligence. It's simply pain. And it was never his fault. But understanding something doesn't mean knowing what to do with it. In the days that follow, Will feels exposed. Raw. His usual defenses don't come as easily. When Lambo pushes job offers across the table, government work, prestigious research positions, salaries that could change his life overnight, Will listens, but without excitement. The opportunities feel heavy now. Permanent. Like choices that will define him before he's ready to define himself. Everyone wants him to choose something. Sean, quietly, wants him to choose himself. They sit together again, this time without sparring. Sean talks about paths not taken. About how life doesn't always reward certainty, but it does reward courage. He doesn't tell Will what to do. He never does. He just asks him one question. What do you want? Will doesn't answer right away. Because for most of his life, wanting something felt dangerous. Wanting led to disappointment. Depending led to loss. So he learned to need nothing. But now, in the quiet space Sean has helped create, Will allows himself to admit the truth, even if only to himself. He misses Skylar. The memory of her isn't painful in the way he expected. It's warm. Complicated. Real. He remembers the way she challenged him without belittling him. The way she laughed. The way she asked him to trust her, not as a test, but as an invitation. And he remembers the moment he pushed her away, not because he didn't care, but because he cared too much. Outside the therapy room, Chucky is waiting for Will in the only way he knows how, bluntly. One morning, Chucky picks him up for work like always. Same streets. Same routine. Same future. And that's when Chucky says it. He tells Will that the best part of his day, the moment he looks forward to most, is those few seconds when he pulls up outside Will's house, hoping that maybe, just maybe, Will won't be there anymore. Not because he doesn't love him, but because Will deserves more. The words hit Will harder than any insult ever could. Chucky isn't asking Will to abandon him. He's giving him permission to leave. That night, Will sits alone in his apartment, surrounded by the familiar. The walls that have heard his laughter. The couch that has absorbed years of late-night conversations. The neighborhood that shaped him, protected him, but also kept him small. For the first time, the comfort feels like a cage. The next morning, Will doesn't show up for his scheduled job interview. Lambo is furious. Disappointed. He sees potential slipping through his fingers and can't understand why Will would walk away from a future so carefully laid out. Sean understands. Will leaves him a note. Simple. Honest. No explanations. No grand speeches. I had to see about a girl. It's not a rejection of intelligence. Or opportunity. Or responsibility. It's a choice. Will gets into his car and drives west, away from South Boston, away from the life that required him to stay guarded. The road stretches out in front of him, uncertain and open. For the first time, uncertainty doesn't feel like a threat. It feels like possibility. We don't see what happens when Will reaches Skylar. We don't need to. The story doesn't promise perfection or permanence. It promises something far more meaningful. It promises courage. Good Will hunting is ultimately not about genius being discovered, it's about pain being acknowledged. It's about understanding that intelligence can protect you, but vulnerability is what sets you free. It reminds us that our past may explain us, but it doesn't have to define us. And that sometimes, the bravest thing a person can do is walk towards something they might lose, simply because it matters. If you enjoyed listening to this story, please like the video, share it with someone who loves movies like this, and subscribe for more narrations.